Chicago Bulls basketball is back, baby. I know it's just the preseason. Technically, it isn't back for another 2 weeks, but I can't help but get excited for this upcoming season and what is sure to be one of the most exciting Bulls teams we have seen in nearly a decade. I'm sure it's going to come with its challenges and struggles, but Bulls basketball will finally be fun to watch again, and it's been a long time since I've been able to say that. So in today's video, I'll be recapping the latest from the Bulls practices and training camp, as well as do a little pregame report for the Bulls preseason game against the Cavs later this evening. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, if you're new to the channel and plan on following the Bulls this season, then consider subscribing, as I will be covering the team all season long, so you don't want to miss out with daily Bulls content. Also, backed by popular demand from last season, I will be having live game chats for every single game this season, and that will also include tonight's game. So if you want to chat with myself and the rest of the Bulls community during the game, feel free to check it out. It was a lot of fun last year, even when the Bulls weren't doing so well. Just remember that I am not able to stream the games themselves, as my channel would get flagged and probably blocked. So it is just a live chat only. Now, I haven't been covering the past few days of training camp as the Bulls have continued to work and practice over the weekend, including yesterday. You likely have seen some of the video footage of the practices that have been released, which I will also include here in case you missed it. And I have to say, what I have liked seeing the most is the pace and speed in which the guys have been playing with. Again, I know it's just practice, but these guys are going all out as if they were playing in a real game. And Billy Donovan talked about this in his media day interview, how this team needs to play with better pace, be faster on the court, and pushing the ball in transition, especially now that they have a point guard in Lonzo Ball who loves operating in transition. Billy Donovan did also call out that you saw a significant drop-off in their speed and offensive pace after the deadline, and how they're really going to focus in on that and being a primary goal of theirs this season, especially given the age of the NBA we live in today, and where teams are focused so much on high-octane offensive systems. Now, a couple of things from yesterday's practice that are worth calling out. I think most people are curious as to who will be getting playing time in the preseason, because obviously the Bulls have two players who will be out of the lineup in Patrick Williams and Coby White. It also was announced that Derrick Jones Jr. and Tony Bradley also injured themselves, but at least at the time of this recording, it has not been confirmed whether they will in fact miss time. And of course, you know, because it's the preseason, starters likely won't be getting the type of minutes that you would normally see them get in a regular season game, as you generally like to give guys who aren't getting as much run in the regular season to get some touches and exposures on the court to see how they mesh together, particularly for guys who are operating on non-guaranteed deals and trying to actually make the roster. Again, not all of these guys who will be playing in the preseason will in fact make the final team. But when asked about this topic regarding player minutes and exhibition games, Casey Johnson received this in reply as it relates to the starters' minutes. And Donovan's philosophy on this is really just to make sure the starters are actually getting good run together, because 4 preseason games is not a lot, especially with it being an entirely new group. He then went on to say that the starters playing together for a good portion of the game is important. So take that as you will, but it appears that for the preseason anyway, preseason or not, Billy Donovan wants to ensure that the starters, and not even really the starters, but the respective units, get a good amount of playing time together in a game situation to get used to each other and playing together for the limited exhibition games that they have before the games actually start counting towards something. Now, Kendall Gill, who covers a lot of the Bulls pre- and post-game shows, he tweeted that he was in attendance at the Bulls practice facility yesterday, and that Bulls fans should be excited by the fact that both Lonzo and Lavine appear to be incredibly dynamic together, and that this team is going to surprise the whole league. Granted, Kendall's probably a little biased because he works for NBC Sports Chicago, but even still, to hear that from an NBA veteran who has been watching and covering the Bulls for a long time now, to say that compared to what we saw last year is very encouraging to know that the fit between Lavine and Lonzo is clicking right off the bat in training camp. We'll see if that actually translates into gameplay, which I'm sure that it will, but knowing these guys are already building that chemistry and working well together is great to hear for Bulls fans. The media did also get a chance to talk to Lonzo after practice and asked him more about this on his up-tempo, speed in transition, and fast style of play. And Ball said that, you know, that's where he's comfortable playing most of the time. He added, you know, I think that the team we put together, we're going to be better in transition, so as long as we get the stops and get out and run, I think we have a lot of good options. And again, this is why AK was so high on Lonzo, because of his ability to push the tempo and run an offense while also being a great defender. You know, Arturis actually mentioned in his interview, in his media day interview, that it's not just his ability to be a playmaker, but the versatility around being a primary ball handler, but also he can be a secondary ball handler, which goes back to what we've been talking about with DeRozan also being a key ball handler for the Bulls, especially in the half court. And I think that's so critical, especially when you look at the Bulls last season and how prone they were to turning the ball over, because they, simply put, didn't have very many good ball handlers and guys with high basketball IQ. I really don't like using that term high IQ because I think it's way overused in the league, but there is something to be said about guys who have experience and understand the mechanics of how the game works on offense. So it's not just about the Bulls being able to play faster, because they played fast at the start of last season. They were one of the top 3 teams in the league in terms of offensive pace, but playing faster and smarter, limiting those turnovers, making the right plays, getting the whole team involved, because playing faster doesn't necessarily win games, as we saw from last season, but being a fast team while also being smart in the manner for which you approach it is incredibly key. Now, Billy Donovan did also add in regards to Lonzo that he's got tremendous instincts as a player on both ends. He mentioned that despite coming in to a whole new team, he was able to pick things up very quickly in terms of what the team is trying to do, and that Lonzo is very cerebral. He's a very cerebral player and has great awareness, and that he thinks he'll continue to get better at getting to the basket and getting to the foul line. All great things you love to hear from the coaching staff and the front office and what they have to say about your lead point guard that you just brought in free agency. By all accounts, it has been a great training camp for the Bulls. You know, with so many new guys joining this team, you expect it may take some time for the players to get acclimated to one another, but so far, at least what has been reported anyway, the dynamic and chemistry between these guys has been noticed right off the bat. It'll be key to have these guys clicking and firing on all cylinders to start off the season strong. Now, as far as tonight's game goes, it's funny because I had to be reminded that the Bulls are going to be going up against Markkanen and Denzel tonight. I almost forgot that they were on the Cavs now, but how can I forget about my boy Denzel? It'll be interesting to see how he comes out going up against his former team, who he was recently throwing a little shade at, and in an exhibition game with no consequences to the team's record, I'm sure he'll likely be hoisting up so many logo threes with 20 seconds left on the shot clock and shimmying his way down the court if he happens to make one, even if he misses the prior 5 shots that he took. I cannot wait to see it now that he's no longer on the Bulls. And I mean, as far as Markkanen, look, you know, things didn't really end up well with Markkanen and the Bulls, as well as Bulls fans, especially with some of the comments Lowry made leading up to free agency. But I do still wish him the best, because I think that he still can be a great player in the NBA in the right situation, which in my view isn't with the Cavs, but regardless, I hope he does well. As for what to expect from the Bulls tonight, well, as I talked about at the beginning of the video, you know, Billy Donovan is expected to give his starters a decent amount of run together, despite it being a preseason game, just so they can get used to playing together. The question, though, remains is who will be in the starting lineup with Patrick Williams being out. Because I think we can all agree the starters, although they haven't been formally announced, not at the time of this recording anyway, will in fact be Lonzo, Lavine, DeRozan, and Vucevic. So with Patrick Williams being out, it leaves an opening for someone to come in and play the 4. Now, I've said before, the lineup I personally think makes the most sense is to slide DeRozan to the 4, who played power forward for a good portion of the season last year with the Spurs, and have Troy Brown Jr. start at the 3. Otherwise, starting a guy like Alice Johnson or even Derrick Jones Jr. would be the likely alternatives, although we're still waiting to hear more details about the injury to Derrick Jones Jr. that was recently announced. So I'm curious to see who Billy Donovan will be going with. I'm curious to see what rotations he'll use for his first preseason game. I'm sure guys like Marco, Io, Stanley Johnson, Javonte Green, guys that may not be necessarily in the rotation normally in regular season games, they will likely get a fair amount of playing time tonight to see what they can do. Now, normally I like to do matchup comparisons, guys the Bulls have to watch out for, and keys to the game whenever I do a preview video of a game in the past when it comes to the regular season anyway. But it's a preseason game, and a lot of those forms of analysis aren't really going to make a ton of sense in an exhibition environment, so I don't think it was really worth diving too deeply into here. I am curious to see Evan Mobley on the Cavs, their 3rd overall pick, just because there's been a lot of high expectations of him, and I'll be on the lookout to see what Lowry and of course Denzel can do as well. Now for the Bulls, of course, seeing Lonzo and DeMar for the first time in a Bulls uniform in a game setting is what I'll be watching out for most. It'll be a bit surreal of an experience to see them playing for Chicago. Outside of those guys, I'm curious to see how Caruso will be coming off the bench, and I'm excited to see the rookie Io get some run as well. People keep talking about him in training camp showing up incredibly well, saying that this kid has a lot of potential. Sam Smith wrote a whole article about this and how the players feel about the rookie, so I'm excited to see what he can do in providing everybody or proving everybody wrong and passing on him in the draft and having him fall all the way to the second round. Anyway, guys, make sure you tune into the game, which will be at 7 p.m. Central. Like I said, I'll have a live game chat on the channel for the matchup if you're interested in joining that. Until then, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.